Fiona Cosgrove.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. Gosh, this is a big stage, isn't it? I feel like I should be sort of running down this way and that way. I might take my shoes off too, because I saw that Ian did. Thanks for having me, basically, and thanks for turning up, because probably you're sitting here going, what on earth is this woman going to talk about? And there are times I actually wonder that myself, but that's not really true, because I have a message that I deliver to a lot of different audiences, and it's received in different ways too. So I would say what I'm going to talk about is about as not diametrically opposed, but as far removed from what you've just listened to. Because I would say that really Ed talks very much down to the micro elements of what you do with clients, yeah? And I'm sort of stepping right back out of this and say, actually, you know, let's look at the big picture. What is it all about? Can I start by asking you a question? I have a rough idea. I'll try and tell you a little bit about my background in case it's relevant without sort of boring you too much, because I've been around a long time. But to ask you, first of all, I know roughly that a lot of you are therapists. Can I just add, some people as chiropractors, there's some people working as personal trainers, yep. A few people wearing a couple of different hats. Am I right? Yeah. Can I just start by asking? This is interactive, by the way, too. You actually have to answer my questions. Got that? And the video's on, so you know you're on show. Now, what are we in the business of? No matter how you work with people, what are we actually trying to achieve? Do you think?
Optimal health.
Optimal health. Love it. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone got another way of putting it? Comfort, yeah, okay. So comfort, optimal health, great. So particularly if you're working any kind of rehab role, yeah? Any others? Feeling good about themselves, yeah? Anything else? Wellness? Oh yes, top of the glass. But you know, the funny thing is people go, oh, Fiona Cosgrove, she's the woman, it's about wellness. And I kind of go, yeah, kind of, but it's also about coaching. So what I talk about is about coaching and wellness, and they're two different things. So I'll start by explaining two shifts I've made over the last 30 years. I've moved very much from being a fitness expert, owning health clubs, lecturing at university, reading, you know, with all good intentions, reading all the latest research and thinking if we just pass on and the results of another study, that's all that's needed. That's not working, is it? You know, I started to realise after 10 years of doing this and jumping up and down the stage and really getting through to the front line of the aerobic class, that the rest were still leaving our clubs and they weren't coming back. And I went, where are you going? I know so much and I'm telling you, you know. So I had several midlife crises, but I moved from fitness into wellness. Okay, long journey. I don't really like the word, it's a bit cliched, isn't it? It's a bit like when you learn counselling. There is no way I can say to anyone, how does that make you feel? Because I feel like a fraud. But the reality is that's often the question I'm actually trying to get, you know, the answer I'm trying to get from people. So I've moved from fitness to wellness, and I've moved from expert to coach. So a very short version of my journey was going from that university, you know, ivory tower, we know a lot and we're going to tell you. And don't get me wrong, there is a place for knowing a lot. And there's a way of disseminating it so people hear and actually take it on board and commit to change. Where we miss it sometimes is in the delivery. So I guess in a way what I'm going to be talking today about is delivery. So in the, you know, midlife crisis number 1, 2 or 3, I found myself studying counselling. Now, has anyone studied counselling here? Okay, well, you know the world of counselling, it's great. But there I was, straight out of the health club, sitting there, running shoes on, all go, ready to go. And I'm sitting around with people wearing long flowy dresses and big hoopy earrings. No problem with big hoopy earrings, but I was in a completely different population. And I was sitting at the back of the room with duct tape across my mouth because I didn't know how not to give the answers. And of course I was learning things like how to listen and how to respond and do everything without actually making a noise. And it was only about halfway through this degree in counselling, I kept on going thinking, I'll work out soon why I'm here. And we got to drug and alcohol counselling. Now I hasten to add I don't have a personal problem with that. I became interested, very interested. Now, what do you think it was about drug and alcohol counselling that made me go, yeah, now we're on to something. There's something I can use here. Health, helping, how else? What else? So what's a similarity? Yeah, like exactly. So addictive behaviours. So I was learning a way of working with people who had addictive behaviours. And isn't that funny? Wouldn't you say that a lot of our clients have addictive behaviours? Do you think not exercising is fairly addictive, and maybe overeating and any of the other things we do? So I was actually learning to work with people in a way that didn't put up resistance. So instead of running and going, do what we say, and if you're really lucky you can look like me, which is sometimes a message that's out there in the fitness industry, isn't it? We were actually saying, hey, look, you know, what is it that you want? And let's see if we can come on board together without making you go, no, I don't want to do it. Because is anyone a parent here? Have you ever noticed that with kids? The more you say, you can't, you can't, you can't, the more they go, I will, I will, I will. Well, that's precisely what we do with clients half the time. We actually are so busy jamming things down their throats as this is what you should do. So the word should is now written out of your vocabulary. You know that? Yeah. What does should say? Where does should come from? I'm going to start soon, by the way. This is just the introduction. Where does it come? Should comes from where? I should do that. How do you feel? Guilty, yeah. You don't exactly feel, I should do that, do you? You don't feel empowered. You feel guilty as hell often. Maybe not. Sometimes it might be a choice. I should go and visit my sick aunt, and you decide that you choose to do that. But often, where does should come from? Someone else. It's someone else's idea and often someone else's value. And it may be a good value. So in the health and fitness industry, when we keep saying, you know, you should be doing this, just listen to yourself in future and say, that's interesting. I'm putting my values onto this person. Now, everyone has got a different value system. Although we believe it's a really good thing to have energy and be healthy and live a long and productive life, someone else might actually really enjoy sitting there having a cigarette and going, what the hell, life is as short as it is, I'm going to have a good time. I don't think it's our role to try and change their value system. So how did I get onto that? Talking about should. So every time you say should, or if a client says to you, I should do this, as a coach, and hopefully you too, what would be a good question to ask them? Why is a good question. There's one that's even better. Do you want to? Do you want to? Because if you don't, there's no point in doing this. Because if you don't want to do it, you won't do it, and you won't commit to doing it. Yep. So where am I on my story? I can't remember. I was in counselling, learning how to listen, sort of making reference to the fact that I think we're communicating with people in a slightly, sometimes ineffective way. I also appreciate that many of you are going to be working with clients where it's really difficult to sit down and say, tell me how you feel. So it's not about that. But the model I'll be describing today does involve some conversation. So I'd really like you to listen to it with almost different ears. I'd like you to listen to it as a person, as an individual, saying, how am I receiving this? What does this mean to me? Does this speak to me? And also listen to it thinking, are the people in my life that I communicate with less effectively than this? Yep. Because what coaching is about, so moving from wellness, we said fitness to wellness. What's the difference between fitness and wellness? What's wellness more about? Or include, should we say? Balance, emotional, yeah, balance. What else? Anything else? Bit spirit, yeah. There's all sorts of things in wellness, isn't it? Such an iffy word. People say to me, I know where you work, I know about the muesli bars, the magnets, the auras, the God knows what else that's associated with wellness. I prefer to keep it really sort of clear as to what I work in. I work in the area of increasing optimal mental or creating optimal mental and physical health. Now, I also work at the Golden Door. So I started as NGM at the Golden Door a year and a half ago, and it was like, the dream environment. Anybody been to the Golden Door? Give them a big plug. Health retreats, interesting area. Man, it was awesome. I had 7 days of 40 people who are going, I'm ready to change, which is really what this is about. Who's ready to change? And I've had a lot of fun rewriting the program and putting through this whole coaching approach there. And the reality is, when people come in saying they're ready to change, you've got a much better place to start. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that we're working with are kind of saying they're there because they should be there, the doctor said, or they know whatever, and they're kind of a bit like, I don't know if I really want to. Yep, that sort of thing. So I'm going back to my statement when I said, listen to this knowing that I'm not expecting you to, for 30 minutes, sit down, hold someone's hand and say, let's create a vision for your future. But there's parts of this, I think, that apply, and I think they apply to life. So when I talk about coaching, so I've talked about the wellness side of things, fitness, the expert to coach side of things is a big shift. And again, maybe for some people, you might find it, that's a little bit controversial what she's saying there, so I'll warn you in advance. But the reality as a coach, what we're trying to do is actually facilitate change. So we become change agents. So when it came down to me asking what are we trying to do, would you agree that a lot of the time we are trying to change? To change people, to help people change? Yeah? Okay, so that's the introduction. So I've sort of given you a little bit of an idea of where is this woman going, what is she going to talk about. Let's make a start. Our main aim, therefore, is to potentially help people change behaviours. Yep. So maybe fix the problem at the time in that moment with whatever it is. Perhaps it's also to give them a feeling of stress release and have walk away feeling better mentally, emotionally, whatever than they did. But often it's about trying to help people create a way of living in the world that's a little bit different. Now that's pretty ambitious, isn't it? But that's what we do. That's the industry we're in. I soon learned after going through this counselling, sports science background, trying to put the two things together, that I was a coach. Anyone, again, question, what's the difference, do you think, in your mind between counselling and coaching? Because this is quite relevant. Empowerment is a very, very good word, yeah, too. Would anybody else like to, there's no one, I like to just give you my interpretation of it, but what does anybody else think of? When you think of counselling, what do you think of? Support, yeah. Or can anyone, what would be the difference between the two in your, or the perception in your mind of counselling, coaching?
You're leading the horse to the water.
You're leading the horse, in which one? Counselling? Yeah, and coaching, you're... Coaching and making them drink. No, we're not making them. Yeah, you encourage them to drink. That's a really good way of putting it, actually. I try and simplify it by saying counselling is often about resolving the past, and coaching is often about helping people move forward. And I reckon if we keep that in that mind, that makes it really clear. The reality is the coaching industry doesn't want to be known as counsellors because there's stigma attached. Because people who have a past, there must be something wrong with them. Who the hell hasn't got a past that doesn't need resolving at some point? Would you agree? You can't divide them. You cannot say these people have got a past and they're messed up, they need fixing, and these people want to move forward, so I'll work with these. Coaching comes from solution-focused counselling. It's the same skill set. But as a counsellor, it's very important to help people resolve the past, but you get to a stage where you think, now what? And I do a lot of this at the Golden Door with people who even lost partners, a lot of grief counselling there, and you can sit there and you can talk and you can go through some really sort of heavy stuff, but at some stage, they need support in working out what to do next, and that becomes coaching. Yep. So I think that's sort of setting the stage a little bit there. You can't be a coach, you can't be involved in coaching without actually becoming very interested in what makes people do what they do. Is anyone in the room interested in that area, theory of motivation? Exactly. I know that. I know we wouldn't be in this industry if we hadn't taken it further to go, so what's it all about? You know, what is it that makes us tick? Now, I'm sure you guys are the same. You've got books on your shelves, all the, you know, what makes us tick, why people fail, why we do what we do, drive, switch. There's a million of them. And I read them all and I pull out the bits that I think are important. So what I actually did to try to make sense out of it as to where the commonality was put these slides together and try to actually draw, see all these things here. Here's a few of these authors, these experts. So you've got DC there. He says that we need autonomy. He's been around for years, by the way. I studied him at uni when I was in my 20s. Autonomy, competence, and connection. Those are the three things that he says you need. Then we've got Daniel Pink in Drive. He's new and sexy and a really, really good book. Autonomy, interesting. Mastery and purpose. Then we've got Seligman, Martin Seligman, everyone heard of him, positive psychologist. He has all the answers. Positive relationships, positive emotions, engagement, meaning, and accomplishment. Those are the things that drive us. And then we've got Hugh Mackay, Sydney author, great guy, great book. He's got 10 different things there. So just to actually draw them together, I thought, well, where do they overlap? And the first one is this. Now, this is very, very relevant to coaching. And it's very, very relevant to working with clients and working with people and understanding ourselves. Do we all want autonomy? Do we all want to be in control? Do you think so? Just a little bit? God, if you saw the last 3 weeks of my life renovating a house with my partner where we nearly came to blows, I don't know how many times, I knew I needed to be autonomous and I wanted to have control in certain areas. We need to be self-determining. That's one of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's what we actually need to be. Now, think about that and then think about often the way we work in health and fitness. Can you see how we often take that away from people with the shoulds? You should do this because the magazine says so. You should do this because I know more than you. Should. That is not creating autonomy in people. There's the first one. Then the second one that overlaps a lot bit here, and the blue one, is connection and belonging. Now, they may be a bit airy-fairy for kind of maybe the work we work in, but I know that Jeff from years and years ago remembers of when we had the club out at Sylvania. One of the things that made that a really successful club was the fact that people belonged. It had nothing to do with the classes that we ran, and maybe it did. You know, maybe we had good staff and we had great equipment. It was more the fact that these people in the Shire felt they belonged. Now, this is in the heyday where there was probably only about 2,000 members as opposed to 7,000. It's easier to belong when there's a smaller group, but people actually want that. But it's also very closely aligned with connection. They want a relationship. So when we work with our clients, and I'm sure you guys would agree, would you say that you're in relationship with them? I keep getting asked for photographs. Can you give us some photographs to show what you do? And I went, you know, the thing is, most of what we do is actually about creating a relationship. It's really difficult to photograph because it is. And that's it. That's what coaching is all about. So you also are working with people in relationship, and it's one of the things people need. They need to feel connected. And the last one there is, what have we got? Belonging, competence and mastery. Now, that also is really aligned with our work with people around health and fitness. Because when we work as a coach and in any other role there, we often set goals. Yeah? People like to tick boxes. You know, at one stage, Seligman was saying, no, happiness is all about just being in the world. And he's now finally agreed that achievement actually turns people on. And it might just be something as simple as just ticking the box that you did what you said you'd do today. It may be something really big. Maybe about money, it may not be. But it's just about that nice feeling of going, that's what I did. Has anyone got a to-do list here? Anyone use a to-do list? Yeah, do you ever get to the end of the day and then you carry them forward? Do you agree that we usually focus on the things we didn't do? If you can in future start focusing on writing down the things that you actually did today and going, yes, look at that, look at me, how good am I? It's a much better way to end your day than going with this great long list that gets transferred over to the next day. Really simple thing, but this is, people want to feel good. So in wellness coaching, when we work with people, we focus on what they did, not what they didn't do. So all the goals they set themselves for the week, when we check back in with them, we go, tell me how you went. They'll start reporting the things they didn't do. The first thing we do is switch to what did you do, what went well. If there are things they didn't do, the question is, so what could you have done differently? So you actually turn that into not a failure, but a sense of actually it was a learning thing. So they had some sense of achievement from it. So when we coach, we actually need to take all of those things into consideration. Because this one I put in corporate, because, you know, in corporate health, often they're working with people in companies who are unengaged. You know that sense of unengagement, lack of engagement? People who are listening to us going, yeah, but I'm off somewhere else. We want to take them from that into feeling that they're engaged. They're actually, tell me more, I'm really interested. I'm not totally convinced yet, but you've got my interest. And this is sort of the micro communication skills that I think are so important. Now, I have no doubt that like maybe 99% of people in this room are good at relating to people. Over the last 7 years, I haven't really told you much about my background, have I? Owned health clubs, did the counselling coaching, sat there with the duct tape, yeah, right, I'm a wellness coach, wrote a book on wellness coaching, which I have a few of here. And the funny thing is I wrote that book after I'd sold my last club in the city and went, well, that's great. I should have written that probably about 15 years ago and been giving it to everyone who joined my club instead of a backpack, because it would have been a lot more use to them. Because it was exploring the obstacles and saying, hey guys, we know it's hard. You know, it's not that easy. It's not just about jumping on the treadmill. So somewhere along the line that, you know, wrote this book and said, right, where am I going now? And moved into this world of training coaches. And what's great about it is that the people that come to the workshops that we run are pretty cool people. They're often very alternative, but they're usually people who've gone, it's not quite working. What we're doing isn't quite working. We'd like to work it better. We'd like to make it work better. And as I started by saying to you, listening to this, probably going, I can't use that in my work. You know, I'm hands-on. I'm doing this stuff. And that's fine. But if you can even take a little bit of a way to go, maybe if I ask this question in a different way, it might have more impact. And I wonder if that could possibly be used with my staff, with management, in education, with my kids, because the reality is it's about relationship skills. So it crosses, wellness is a great place to work with because people go, yeah, that's safe. You know, we can talk about fitness and we can talk about what we eat. The reality is wellness coaching goes into how people think, what they tell themselves, their sense of self-esteem, all those things that you guys started saying, that's what we're about. So it's a much bigger field. So I'm not apologizing by any means, but I am understanding that you guys aren't all sitting in a room with someone for 45 minutes to an hour going, let's talk. But I also know that there'll be some people in this room who'll go away going, that might be something I want to do. Because it actually does become something that's very, very interesting and really, really rewarding as work. But the reality is you can use it. So whether you're a PT, there's a whole set of skills you can start using. So what I'm going to cover today is actually, I've talked a little bit about the motivation side of things. I want to try and convince you why I believe that being a coach as to being an expert, and I say that with some qualifications, could be more effective. I'm definitely going to talk about positive psychology because I can't not talk about it. Because as opposed to health coaching, wellness coaching works in this field of helping people be happy, which isn't too bad, is it? It's fit. You can be fit and unhappy, yeah? Yeah, that's right. And you can be unfit and happy. It'd be nice to get somewhere in the middle. And then I'm going to talk about neuroscience, which was great because Ian led right into that. And I'm going to talk about a different person. But there's some research that actually shows what happens to your brain when you ask them a question in a certain way. And it has a fairly big impact. So that's where we're going today. How are we going? Better get into it, hadn't I? No, we're sort of halfway through already. That was the intro. The intro tends to go through the whole session, by the way. It usually goes all day when I do a workshop. So we said what's counselling, what's coaching. Here's one definition. This is coaching generally. So wellness coaching is specifically around behaviours that relate to wellness, usually fitness, nutrition, sleep, hydration, bit of stress management, all that stuff. Coaching, you can coach in relationship coaching, retirement coaching, sports coaching, you name it. It's out there, isn't it? It's a pretty trendy word, yeah? There's a lot of people out there calling themselves coaches who have absolutely no idea what coaching's about. Because the old term of coaching was around sports coaching, which is anybody else was in a team when you turned up to training late and you had to run around the field 3 times and do 20 push-ups. Yeah, this is not wellness coaching, okay? But people have that in their mind. They go, I am now a fitness coach, so I'm just going to, talk louder, shout at you, and that makes me a coach. It doesn't make you a coach at all. So part of my aim is to actually try and change that definition and impression as to what coaching is. So did you see what that is? Yeah, close relationship, structure, partnership. It provides expertise, inspiration, accountability. That's coaching generally. I like this one. That's where the word coach comes from. But, there's something in that, particularly when we're talking about life coaching. If you can get them the right way around and alive, that's fine, but that's just me being silly. Health and wellness coaching, you've heard the 2 terms? Yep. I don't know which you relate to or more interested in, but there is a slight difference. And I work with Jeanette Gale, who is Health Coaching Australia, she's now Health Change Australia, and we talked about this. And it's not so much that the coaching is different, it's probably more the clientele you're working with that are different. So I think here's the latest definition of health and wellness coaching. This was put together when I was at a summit in the States, an international summit, 69 Americans and 1 non-American, by the way. And we broke into groups. Now, I was lucky enough to be in the group that actually put together a definition. It took about 12 weeks of Americans on the phone arguing over every word. But anyway, you can read that for what it's worth, all right? So that's health and wellness coaching. Gives you an idea of the kind of boundaries around it. This probably shows better than anything the models of care, the traditional model of care as opposed to the coaching model. So look at those things there and see if you would agree. So the traditional model, the health professional is definitely the expert. In the coaching model, the client is the expert in their own life. Traditional, the client's told what to do. Coaching, the client finds their own solutions. The traditional model comes from extrinsic motivation. With coaching, we're looking for intrinsic motivation. The traditional, the client is required to facilitate change. In the coaching model, there's collaboration and assistance. So some of them are subtle and some of them are pretty big. Traditional, we don't worry about what the barriers are. Coaching model, we actually look at what the barriers are. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Because there's a reason why people don't do what they want to do, isn't there? And I think, again, in the fitness industry, we've sometimes missed that. We've just kind of gone headlong at going, well, we'll do it again. It'll work this time. They've already been a member of 5 clubs. They've already tried this. They've tried that. At what stage do we ask, why didn't it work? So we spend a lot of time in coaching actually exploring what went wrong or how we can change it. And that, again, I know, and when I speak about the fitness industry, it's not meant to sound derogatively at all, because I've been out there doing it, I'd say probably wrong for many, many years too, is we just skip past that. We had people walking in the door going, here's my money. What is the only thing that we knew or we know that they're ready to do when they join a health club and pay their money? Pay, precisely. But we take this leap of faith, don't we? We go, great, here we go. We've got the money. Some people will say, oh, they're ready to change, they're ready to exit. Go, not necessarily. In fact, in an ideal world, as far as I'm concerned, we would have a month program for people who weren't really ready to start exercising yet, but they're ready to be a member of the club. A lot of people are a member of the clubs, they don't think they have to use it. They think they just have to be a member to lose weight. Yeah, you come across those? It's true, isn't it? So this assumption that people are ready to do the things that we want them to do, I think is a little bit too big a leap. I think we need to spend a lot longer. What exactly are you ready to change? So, increased resistance to change. Often people sit there going, yeah, I know I should do that. When you're coaching them, people actually become joined in the process, and there's a lowered resistance. And that probably gives you a rough idea of the difference between health and wellness coaching. So health coaches tend to work with people with chronic illness to get them to the baseline. Whereas I love wellness coaching, and it certainly fits in the sort of health and fitness industry where we're trying to get people to a place that they don't even know they want to get to yet. Now that's when our work becomes super cool, doesn't it? So people come in saying, I want to lose weight, and next thing they're running a marathon and they're doing this and they're doing that, becoming role models for people. That's stuff that I know that we do well in the fitness industry. Wellness Coachly simply gives us better skills to be able to help the people that struggle with change, as opposed to the front line of the aerobics class who all want to be you anyway. Yeah? So that's who we're talking to. Now, this is the slide that some people might say, well, hang on a second, I don't know, I have a lot of degrees and I have a lot of knowledge and you're trying to tell me that I shouldn't pass it on. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that the expert approach, I believe, has some flaws in it. So the first point there is, do you think we have enough? Or do you think we maybe need another diet book? No? Do you think it's just one more? There's a lot of people out there who think that's it, waiting for the one to come out that will be the one. And every week there's a new one out there. And off we go. Let's go and buy this one will work. Do you know what we're working with people in weight loss? We're working with chronic lack of confidence. Nothing to do with fast food. It's the fact that people actually don't believe they can do it, and I'll come back to that. So the first thing with the expert role is that we have enough guidelines and experts. I used to think we didn't. I thought we needed another way of doing it. It's out there. Do you think that most people know what to do and want to change? Now, in some of your roles, yeah, and feel free to sort of throw comments out there, because I think you're right to a certain extent. People might think that they're doing the right thing to lose weight. Generally speaking, though, if we asked a room full of people who wanted to lose weight, and I use that as an example, what do you think they might say they needed to do? Yeah, move more, eat less? Something along those lines, yeah. And we know it's not that simple. But the fact is that we assume that people don't know that. And you know what, if you ask people, how's this one? We could give people all the elaborate eating plans in the world, all the fancy exercise programs. If you ask someone, what changes do you think you could make, or that would make a difference in your routine to your current weight? In other words, how could you go into calorie deficit? Do you think they might have one or two ideas? I do too. It's amazing. And that's a big shift from often getting personal trainers to go, but I have to tell them what to do. And I go, why don't you ask them first? So often in wellness coaching, they're setting goals around, well, you know what, I'm going to walk the dog for 20 minutes every morning before such and such. You didn't need any expert information to do that. But for someone to add that 20 minutes every day, feel confident about doing it, it can make a big difference. Not alone, but on its, so you get where I'm coming from? Behaviour change starts here. And that's what I really meant to start saying, is that we've been talking, and certainly listening to you, and you're talking about the body, absolutely essential, super interesting. We are very, very interested in what makes us tick. We could recite, you know, muscle insertions, origins, everything. I love that stuff. Love exercise physiology. I had to step back from that to realise that actually we need to work with from here up. You know, we've been working a lot from here down. We still need to. Would you agree with me on that one? Is everybody cool with that? It's what happens here that stops people creating these lifestyle habits that actually make something sustainable. So we need to actually work from the neck up, not just down. And getting back to that point again, it's the fact that people lack confidence in their ability to change that trips them up time and time again. So there's a great paper called Obesity as a Confidence Crisis, and it's a white paper. It's got nothing to do, as I say, with fast foods and things like that. It's just that people have tried so many diets and ways of eating in different forms, they actually don't believe they can. And the old saying, whether you think you can or you can't, you're probably right. Yeah, definitely. Do you agree with that? Now this is where it gets a little bit controversial. Because the thing is, you know, we tell people what to do all the time, don't we? Do you think it builds confidence? Now let me take a real sort of leap of faith. Are there any doctors in the room? Last time I told this, it was full of doctors and I had to apologise in advance. Any doctors in the room? I'm not knocking the medical profession, because this is really just a very broad example. If you went to the doctors in today's current busy climate and you'd been feeling a little bit tired and run down, you know, and you go in and you'd say, oh, I'm just feeling tired, not doing it, blah, blah, blah. What will often happen within the first 10 minutes? Not always. Blood test, yeah. Usually it involves a pen and paper, doesn't it? Yeah. And again, I totally appreciate that not all doctors are like this, but look, it's the way it works. They've got 10 minutes. Here we go. Here's the script. Off you go, and you go, thank you, and you walk out like this with your prescription. Yeah, totally empowered, not. Yeah. Has anyone got any prescriptions stuck in their diaries or their top drawers that they haven't filled? Yeah, not just me. Anybody? Has anybody else sort of thought to themselves, I don't know, I think I've got a better idea. You know, because again, we're not part of that process. The reality is, if the doctor could stop and actually say, what do you think could be contributing towards your tiredness? yeah, I might have an idea or two, wouldn't you? And then you become become part of that conversation and hopefully part of the solution. And I know that's a very broad example, but that idea of going, tell me your problem, I'll take responsibility, I will fix you, thank you, and off you go. And what happens on the receiving end to that person who's used to doing that, which is rife through society, isn't it? We want to be told what to do. And I say we, a lot of people want to be told what to do. I don't. But you know, if somebody else tells you what to do, what does that absolve us from? Responsibility. And if it doesn't work, it's all their fault. Okay, it's got nothing to do with us, it's actually theirs. And I think that this is what leads into this victim mentality. This idea that, hey, it wasn't my fault. And all you have to do is listen to the news. And I say this every week I talk at the Golden Door. You listen to the news, every time there's an event, the first thing we start doing is looking for someone to blame. Whose fault was it? In fact, that makes great news, doesn't it? Doesn't matter if it's an earthquake, it's got to be somebody's fault. There's got to be somebody wrong who didn't tell somebody something. And that's the way society seems to be focusing. So when I talk about coaching now, it's about shifting back to the idea of people taking responsibility for themselves with the help of people such as ourselves who have expert knowledge. I haven't got slides on this, but when I actually teach the coaching workshop, I say, look, the way we deliver expert information, notice information, not advice. Information is by giving people choices and asking permission. And that's a really small shift, but it's along the lines of, I've noticed that you've been talking about your blood sugar and your energy levels have been low and up and down, etc., etc. You know, I wonder if you've heard of anything called the glycemic index. Would you be interested in getting some information on that? See the shift? I mean, this is just a really broad example. Or someone saying, oh, look, I want to be more flexible. How do I go about it? Instead of going, here's your program, you go, well, there's a couple of ways around it. You can do this or you can do that. Which out of those appeals to you? So you can still be the expert, but it's about actually, and that's something that I think that we can all use straight away, is just to have that respect to actually engage them in the process. So it's not just about passing over the script or something like it. For that reason. Okay, I've gone on about that, I know, but we do like our own ideas better. Yep. And that quote's been around the 17th century. So we need to try and move from the expert who gives advice. The word advice I don't like at all. It's another one of those, the shoulds and advice. Because how does advice make you feel? Does it make you feel a little bit disempowered at times? And I've had a lot of people, trust me, a lot of lawyers and people argue, they're going, no, there are times where people come for advice. You know what, even if I'm terminally ill, I want information. I want to be able to make choices. That's about empowerment. Advice is saying, I know what you should do better than you do, so I'm going to tell you what to do. And you see it and hear it in coffee shops all the time. You listen in coffee shops, you sit there, especially women, they're sitting there and she's talking about the guy she's with and he's done this and he's done that, and the friend goes, you've just got to leave him. You know, it's simple. This is what I think you should do, here's my advice. Where are we coming from? You know, really? Next thing she's back with him, we all look like fools. But wouldn't it be better to actually just listen, reflect? So that's a problem, it's this, that and the other. You've got two options, what do you reckon? That conversation is what coaching's about. And I reckon it works so much better with people. I could tell lots of stories on that, but I'll probably run out of time. So everybody gets the idea about that expert. Is anyone sitting feeling really, really uncomfortable? That I've said, no, we can't be experts anymore, we're way too, you're okay with that? That's good. I had one, I won't say she was difficult, she was a lovely, challenging person in a workshop who said, I disagree. There is a reason, because I say, we don't need advice, we just need information. She said, what do you do if somebody calls you up and said, I'm having a baby on the garage floor, what shall I do now? And I went, good point. That is not the time to say, and what do you think are some of your options? Okay, so there is, in emergencies, you can get away with advice. But generally speaking, you know, if there's a little bit of time on your side, let the person turn, and one of the biggest questions in the workshops we have is personal trainers saying, and it often is personal trainers saying, how do I stop giving them suggestions? How do I stop? You know, because it's coming out because I'm so used to doing that. And we say, very simply, you stop and you say, what do you think some of your options are? See, once you get used to it, it's the easiest thing in the world. And yes, there'll be a time where you're actually going to get in there and help them work out what it is, but it's about working with someone, not telling someone what to do. Okay, so the principles it rests on. Coaching is a line of questioning. Everybody got that? Has anyone done any coaching in the room? I might be talking to some people who are sort of like, yeah. It's quite different moving from an approach where you're telling to suddenly asking questions. And if we have time, and I think we do, I'm going to give 3 minutes to an exercise on this. Can you handle it? Yeah, good. Responsibility lies with the client. That's the shift. You know, when you start coaching or when you start using that attitude, you finish a session and you walk away going, I wonder how they'll go. Now, how many people actually leave sessions for whatever you do, often thinking, God, I wonder if they're going to get it. You know, I wonder if I've made it clear enough to them. And I was a personal trainer for years, and I often go, oh my God, why isn't it working? And I'd worry about it. The great thing with coaching, because you go in with an attitude of, it's actually your responsibility. I'm just here to help you. It's a completely different feeling. And that's what's great about coaching. When you're working, you walk away and you don't worry about it anymore. So we pass on, I think I've spoken about this now, so as information, giving them choice, asking permission. I didn't start by saying that I will send out handouts for the notes to everybody, if everybody's okay with me getting your email address, and I'll just send them out and you can print them off. So yeah, I should ask permission, but is everybody okay with me sending notes? No, that's absolutely fine if you don't want. Oh, I could do it the other way around and pass paper around and say if you'd like copies of the notes. Is that okay with you? Yeah. Or I can send them to Jeff and he can do what he likes with them. How's that? Easy. Okay, so when is advice advisable? I said in an emergency. These are the two things there. We try and do this in coaching. And again, we talk at the Golden Door. There's two things we want to do all week. Every single thing we do there should be doing this. Increasing someone's awareness and generating self-responsibility. The minute we slip back into do what we say because we're the expert, we've been doing this forever and ever, and look at us, we're the Golden Door, blah, blah. That's not what we're doing. It's not what we're about. And there's been a huge shift, and there's been a great response from the guests. Some of them have gone, no, I just want you to tell me what to do. But most of them have actually gone, oh my God, it's up to me. Yep, you better believe it, because that's the way it'll work. So the wellness coaching model, look, it's a very simple three-part model in a way. The first thing is actually finding out with someone where they're at now. Okay, so I'm speaking very generally. This is life coaching, wellness coaching, any kind of coaching. What's going on now? If we had longer, we usually have a little demo at the front and have a bit of a play with this. So tell me what's happening. What would you like to change? Where are you at now so we actually know? What would you like to change? What's important for you to change? Where would you like to start? What do you feel most confident at changing? So working with people around lifestyle change, instead of looking for the thing that we think they need the most, which is often what we do, why don't we look at the thing that they feel most inclined to do so that they get some runs on the board? The difference in the message that I send in wellness coaching is that change happens slowly. Now that doesn't really cut it in our industry, does it? When everybody wants a quick fix. Biggest loser, quickest loser, fastest loser, we want it now because we live in a society that says we want instant gratification. And the programs that sell it quicker are the ones that sell the fastest. Now that's not always the case, and there's some good stuff out there too, but it's not a very sexy message saying, actually, we'd like you to change slowly. But you know what you say to a client? As far as I'm concerned, the slower you lose weight, the better. That's not a bad message to send because you can see them go, really? And then you explain why. You say, well, actually what happens is if you lose weight fast, etc., etc. I've seen people just finally go, oh my God, so, you know, I can actually go into this slowly. It's a really, really good message to send. But, you know, whether or not it sells books or it sells programs, I don't know. That's a guy called Sir John Whitmore. I know it's another quote there, but it's a real big statement, I think, on life. Things are changing. And I hate talking about this. I went to a conference, but I did. I went to a conference in Boston, and it was called Coaching in Leadership and Medicine. How broad is that? This massive conference, and it was just about everyone going, we have got to change the way we're working with people in the world, particularly in leadership, because it's changed, hasn't it? The leader doesn't stand there going, I'm the boss and I know everything. The boss has no idea what that person is doing now because technology is so varied and it's all becoming much more flat line. And I think this is where we're going. In medicine, the doctors, same thing. They're starting to realise that there's no more this I am the authority and you do what I say. It's all about partnering with people. So it's not just me banging the drum around, you know, weight loss and getting fitter. It's actually shifting in the world. And if we're switched on, we need to know about this stuff because it's not just, you know, one person's idea. So what do we need to create change? The first thing we need is, would you agree, a sense of discontent? Yep. So your clients have to come in, whatever they're doing, they have to feel not really happy with where they are. So whether it's about chronic pain or whether it's about tight muscles or whether it's about lack of fitness and whether it's about weight loss, they've got to actually want to change. If someone's coming in with a last cigarette outside the door going, I can't wait to get out for another one, but the doctor says I should give up, don't waste your time. It's not important to them. Now that, for some people, is not good because they go, but I have to, it's my responsibility. And I go, why? They don't want to change, why should you? It's not your, you know, I don't think we should take responsibility for other people's decisions. The second thing we need is a vision of where we want to go. Now, I like working with people who apply this to themselves, because if there's anything in your life right now that you would like to be doing differently, And if there's anybody here who has everything working perfectly, I'd like you to come out the front and tell us how you did it, because the rest of us are still struggling. Is there someone coming out? I thought he was coming out the front. Never has anybody done that. You get the idea. Generally, there's areas in our life that we can tweak a bit. But the thing that we often do is we don't stop long enough to go, we tolerate things, and we don't stop long enough to go, what would it be like if it was working better? So I think you can apply that to anyone you work with now, to just stop them for a minute and go, what would it be like? What would it look like? So again, I use the golden door as an example because you've got 7 days, people thrown into an environment where they've got time to write down what their life would be like if it were working better. We don't often have time to do that. But we work with clients and we help them write that down so that they know where they're actually trying to go. The third thing is, information and know-how. I agree. Notice information, not advice. And the fourth thing is a detailed, individually tailored plan. So this idea of saying one size fits all just doesn't cut it, I believe. I said that something stops us, this idea of obstacles. Yep. We may or may not have time to do this little question thing, but the things that get in the way come in many shapes and sizes. And there's 4 categories, and we don't really need to be able to categorize them. But would you agree that sometimes there's situations that stop us getting what we want? So, you're a single mum with 11 kids and you don't live anywhere near a gym, or whatever it is. Well, I'm sure you can apply that to your clients, that situational obstacles make it really difficult to change. The first thing as a coach to do is to acknowledge that that's correct. That must be hard for you. Not, oh, I can fix that for you, this is easy, I've got the solution. That must be really difficult. Okay, so situational obstacle. The next one is the behavioural. What would a behavioural obstacle be to say someone losing weight? Something that they're doing. Yeah, eating cake every day or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Not exercise, sitting watching the TV, drinking 10 beers. Behavioural obstacles. Those are things that are getting in the way. We need to acknowledge them. The third one is a little bit deeper. What goes on here? What kind of things do people think that stop them getting where they want to get to? Self-doubt. I can't do that. I'm not a regular exerciser. I don't like exercise. I'm not a sporty person. You start getting into what we call irrational beliefs often, but sometimes it's just, I can't do that. I'll fail. I've failed before. Yep, so the things we tell ourselves. Now we're getting into some heavy ground there, and you can say, oh, that's psychology, we don't go there. Well, we have to. It's who we are, it's what we think. And if you, sorry? Limiting beliefs. I can't do that. So how's the classic one? I'm not good at sports. And they say this 5 times. And you say, I've noticed that you've said a few times that you're not good at sports. When did you decide that? And they say, when I was 5 and I dropped the egg in the egg and spoon race. Or something like that, But we're like that. We're weird. We make our mind up about things at the most ridiculous times and we follow it through. And I know that's an exaggeration. But people, oh, because that's what my parents told me. It's often from childhood. We always blame the parents. It's much easier that way. So things that we think, and it's really just actually helping someone, recognise that they're saying that all the time. And then you go through the thing of testing the belief. Is that actually accurate? I don't like exercise, I can't stand sweating, that's great. Is there a way around that? Is there a way of thinking of movement so it doesn't involve those actual thoughts? And then fourthly is the emotional barriers, which generally come out of what you think. So if you think, I can't do that, your emotion is obviously going to be fear of failure or just lack of self-confidence. As coaches, we're in the business of building confidence, not building muscles. That's the classic statement I'll say to personal trainers. That's a very different sort of product, isn't it? Barriers, obstacles. As I said, most of it is lack of confidence. Coaching comes in. Nice statement. My belief in you is stronger than your doubt in yourself. If we could all have coaches in every area of our life, we'd all be better people. But again, I wrote the Coach Yourself to Wellness to try and take the principles into our own lives to actually speak to ourselves in a different way. The reality is having someone working with you going, I am right behind you and I really believe you can do this. How good does that make you feel? Yeah. Sorry? Whose hand is it? I don't know. Actually, it is, isn't it? Someone looks like they're hanging on to that person. Help me, help me. Yeah, whatever. It's meant to be a joint approach. Cool. Okay, so the second part of the model is what would your life of wellness be like? Why is it important? What are your values that make it important? Someone says they want to lose weight. Someone says they want to be pain-free. Someone says they want to be more flexible, whatever it is, more relaxed. The question, why is that important to you, is essential. Because people go, well, it's obvious, isn't it? Well, no. Why is it important to you? What might someone say if you say, why is losing weight important to you?
They want to be able to go home.
Yeah, they want to go play with the kids. Oh, right, okay, so that's a whole different thing to looking good because the magazines say I should be a size. People actually start talking about their values, and that's, again, what we're trying to tap into. Not our values, what they value. So I've had people say to me, look, I just want to have better sex, that's why I want to lose weight. Well, it would be nice that she had a more noble reason, but if she hasn't got one and we question around that, well, so be it. That's her value, you know. It's this idea of don't put our values on people, but help them tap into what they value, because often you'll find that people are living outside of their values, which is why they're not happy. So wellness and wellness coaching, this area becomes much bigger. Every area that we actually work in this room is usually integral to the way the rest of that person's life is working. That's why I think we're in a pretty cool industry. Here we go. If you don't believe me that change isn't a journey, that pictorially describes it. Halfway up that pyramid, it's just a great graphical representation. It's saying really build the blocks below before you jump into action. I know it's a little bit hard to read there, but action starts halfway up. So this idea of just jumping in and just doing it straight away, all you have to do is look at New Year's resolutions. Yeah? I use the example of Nike, just do it. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Should I? The company that uses just do it. Great slogan. Yep. Just do it. Sold a lot of running shoes. Anyone bought any because of that? Yeah, put the running shoes on. You haven't run for 5 years. On go those great shoes and off you go. Just do it. Down the road, you're running, you know, 1K, 2K down the road. What does your body tell you? Stop doing it. Stop doing it now and don't think of doing it for another 5 years. Okay, it only works for things like bungee jumping or maybe buying running shoes or asking someone out on a date or something like that. But actual sustained lifestyle behaviour, you need something more than just doing it. And again, this is this idea of coaching someone to be prepared for change so that when they start, they're ready. How are we going for time here? Are we on a tight time schedule? I've gone longer than I'm sort of like, yeah. Everybody okay with this? What time's the next person on? 50 minutes. Is everybody okay with that? No one's sitting there going, don't get me out of here, it's 12 o'clock. I know that you're health and fitness professionals and it's hard sitting down. Positive psychology, I have to talk about it because it is so much a part of this idea of wellness. People want more than fitness, and again, I've drawn the golden door. They come there thinking they want to lose weight and they want to get fitter. We've got 4 categories of why people come. Who wants to lie by the pool, we say, and 2 people go, yeah, maybe. Who wants a kickstart and some health habits? You know, half the room, definitely. You know, they think they're coming to the boot camp, the health farm, you know, detox stuff. Then there's the people who've gone through loss, we don't ask them, but the 4th ones are who is actually in need of a new direction in their life? So many hands go up. And we say, hey, you may not know what it is. And it's a really interesting comment. And okay, that maybe that population isn't typical of everyone, but more and more I'm seeing people who are living busy, supposedly productive, successful lives who are going, what the hell am I doing? I'm stressed to the eyeballs. You guys see these people too. And I reckon it is a function of life and the busyness and everything that's going on, and we're all moving so fast that we don't have time to stop and go, I hate my job, I don't like my relationship, I don't know if I want to live in a house that big, whatever it is. So taking time actually to do that. So positive psychology is really this idea of exploring that, and it's not the pop psychology books that are out there. Some of this stuff is very, very important and very valid. What it is, it's a scientific study. It's been about, I thought I was already over that. Positive psychology, right? 8 years old, it's 10 years old now, I think, since I actually wrote that slide. And it came about from Martin Seligman going, and he's a funny man. He says himself, he's a bit of a depressive, kind of pessimistic man, walks around like this. He actually invented positive psychology, and he actually woke up one day. He said, I invented it because I had to. I was sick of being depressed. He said, all we're doing as psychologists is focusing on pathology in people who aren't well, on mental disorders, on depression. Why don't we start studying what makes people happy? That's more logical, isn't it? And this again is why to me it taps in with wellness coaching as opposed to health coaching just getting to there. And I'm not saying that health coaches just do that, by the way. There's a lot of crossing over. But this idea of people sort of reaching for the stars. So all these things there, some of which you're familiar with, building on strengths, creating positive emotions, doing activities that generate flow states. Do you know what a flow state is? Anybody describe something they do that puts them in flow? And I'll give you the quick definition. Yeah.
Living in the moment. You know,
Yeah.
Everything's happening around.
Yeah, that's definitely part of it too. Anyone can you think of an activity you do that we want to hear? Yoga, great, yeah, absolutely. So flow, the definition is that you're challenged, but you're not too challenged and you're not under-challenged. You're completely unaware of time passing. You're absorbed in the activity, and at the end of it you go, gee, that was good, I'd like to do that again. That's the simple definition of it. So it's not just sitting around eating chocolate, because you're not challenged, depending on how big the chocolate is, I suppose, but it's something that usually stimulates you and gets you going. We don't do a lot of that in our lives, I don't think, anymore. We probably do as sports people. Do you know that people get more flow from work now than they ever did before? Would you agree with that? I know I do. I mean, that I would definitely describe a lot of my work as that's when I'm in the flow. When we talk about our clients, often they're living in a way where they don't get it. And then they come to a gym or they come somewhere, we're telling them to do exercises that they hate doing. Why don't we find out what floats their boat, as somebody said? Do they like music? Do they like dancing? Do they like... What gets them going that can help create flow with the things that may not be as pleasant, possibly? Yeah.
How would you put this into a massage context?
Yeah, really good point there. So, and that's what I tried to say. Look, I know for a fact, because I've been on the table enough, to know that the conversations that go on the table are often around this sort of stuff. I think it's probably more about... in terms of flow, I think as a therapist, you're probably there a lot of the time, maybe not on a bad day, but you're probably getting the flow yourself. It's more around the conversation you're having with someone, potentially around lifestyle. Has anyone got any comments to make on that? Because I know, I really understand that the relevance to your daily work may seem a little bit far removed. So maybe it's more of a comment on life. Yeah.
Helping them to heal themselves.
Okay, yeah, helping them to heal themselves. And that's why I'd rather hear from you than for me to try and talk massage therapist language that may not be appropriate. So would you often talk about ways of living outside of that in terms of health habits? Would you say, Emma?
It depends on what they're there for.
Yeah.
In terms
Yeah.
of, it's purely pain management.
Yep.
And you can be a little bit more practical, but if
Yeah.
you're there for relaxation, then obviously talking sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
You don't want to bombard questions.
Yeah.
That's determining their expectations then, right back in the beginning.
Yes, exactly. So what are you here for? What do you want? It's a really good question, because that's just one out of lots of different parts of positive psychology. Changing someone's language, reflecting something back to somebody to put a reframe on it can be done in conversation. And it can shift the way people are talking. People start whinging about this, that and the other, and you turn it and say, oh, well, it sounds like that's going well for you. Oh, different brain chemicals. And that's what I'll be finishing with, a very big topic in a very small, so to actually show you what happens in people's brain. That might answer your question a little bit. I'm really aware of the fact that ideally you'd be sitting down for an hour with people and helping them create a vision and go through goals, etc., but you can still pull bits of this out. So positive psychology got all of these things, positive relationships, enabling peak performance. It's a great area of study. Seligman said there's 5 things, as I said earlier. Just feeling a positive emotion. We can choose our own reality, can't we? We can get out of bed and go, my God, this is not going to be a good day. How many times do we say that? Duh, you're not going to have a good day, are you, after you've said that? You've actually determined what's going on for you. So in this conversation with clients and with people we know, to try to put a positive spin on it, really important. Engagement is about flow, being engaged in what you're doing, so you make sure that people actually are, if you're working with them in that area. Positive relationships come straight into it, in that that's what's going on with you. You know, whatever, however you work with people, would you agree, am I right in saying that in the room, that most people agree that the relationship, no matter what you're doing with them, is important? I know it is for me. I will only go to a health professional if I can connect with that person. So, very important. Meaning, this idea of meaning comes up in work, in what people do, why am I doing it? People trying to lose weight who haven't actually had a conversation around why they want to lose weight in the first place. That's the meaning we put on our daily activities. And finally, achievement, this idea of ticking boxes and actually creating goals. And I think that that's a really good thing, again, if you're seeing someone on a regular basis, to be able to talk to them about what they had decided to do in that last week or 2 weeks ago, and acknowledge that they did it well. Because just like us, they've got a to-do list, and all they do is focus on the things they didn't do. I have to have somebody to say, good job. I mean, it sounds so American, doesn't it? But it's so valuable to actually have someone go, good for you. And I think this came to about when I was writing the book here, and there was a time in my life I was very much so solitary, and I'd moved from the relationship and family, this, that, and I suddenly was doing things, and there were times where I went, oh, I just did this wonderful thing, and I've got no one to tell about it. It was an awful moment. I just went, no one's going to tell me I did great. So I took to my own lesson, I learned how to give myself a pat on the back, you know, and I did it in funny ways, like buy myself some flowers and things like that. But I think that stuff is so important. And I think that when we're in relationship with people, we can actually help them do this more. So all of these statements there, we know, positive emotions. Did anybody see the 60-minute segment on Sunday night? I got to write a blog on that, on placebos. Very interesting, wasn't it? And we know that it's been out there. We know that placebos can work. But this was much more of a rigorous study around certain operations that had been done on people. Some of them didn't actually have the operation. They just went in and fiddled around with their knees. Did you see it, Ian? It was very, very good. There was absolutely, I think, I don't want to misquote it, but along the lines of no significant difference in improvement between the people who had placebos and people who had operations. Now, they were just in certain conditions. They weren't saying across the board. It was extremely interesting, certainly in my line of work, because I'm sitting there going, they were in that segment, they were almost going, how can we do this without exploiting people? How can we just pretend they've had the thing and then, you know, they'll get better? And I'm thinking, are you missing the point there? How can we help people believe that they can manage their pain, get better, do whatever? I mean, if it is possible just because they believe the placebo did it, surely we can tap into that and help them believe in themselves. And I know we're getting into this whole thing of faith healing and all this kind of hooky-pooky area there, but there's something in that, isn't there? The power of the mind is amazing, and I'm going to finish on that in a second. Okay, nothing there that I think that we haven't really touched. A guy called Richard Boyatzis. We have our heroes, don't we? He's my latest. I met him 2 years ago at a conference, and he was the funniest man I've ever seen. He was a neuroscientist. And he really actually started looking at what happens to the brain. You know, we can do this now because we've got functional MRI. We can see which bits are lighting up, whereas before we had a sense for it. Some of his research was around, he did it on university students, and it was the questions they were asked. And they were both working with a coach, these two groups, but they asked questions in a different way. And I'm not going to, for a minute, try and explain which parts of the brain represent what. You're going to see lots of colours, and you're going to believe me that there are good bits of the brain that lit up at certain questions and other bits. So coming up there. The positive or the negative emotional attractors is the term he used to say what kind of states came about when they were asked certain questions. So looking at that. Things like the positive visioning area. I will explain that rather than looking at the actual brain picture, but that's what they were looking at. Firstly, the examples of the questions. And if you look at those questions, they both sound like pretty good coaching questions, I thought to myself. So they're asked on the positive emotional attractor question, if everything worked out perfectly in your life, what would you be doing in 10 years' time? As opposed to the negative down here, what challenges have you encountered so far? Which is a fairly fair question, isn't it? But do you see where it's going? It's going to the negative. How demanding is your class schedule? These are good questions. They're questions, they're coaching questions. I'm listening to this going, oh my God. This is now down to not just asking questions, it's asking the right questions. How would you be spending your time? What would you be like as a person, as opposed to how difficult is it to make friends? So it's again this reality of what we focus on. So what happened was when they asked the positive emotional attractor questions, these things went on. Things like improved cognitive function, increased perceptual openness to ideas, improved emotional states, all associated with that. And I know I'm giving you a very, very bite-sized piece of this, and I'm hoping that you'll trust me, that I didn't just make this up. Whereas, this is what goes on. So someone asks you, what challenges have you faced so far? And all of a sudden, you've got chemical reactions in your body. Now that, I think, is very relevant because of the small conversations we have with people. And it doesn't mean we can walk around in la-la land all the time, just only asking the nice, pleasant things. But it's worth thinking about that sometimes if we can just switch people into being able to imagine the possibility of things being different, there's going to be something that switches on in their brain. That has so many uses in education, in training, in health. So again, all the emotional things are negative about defensiveness, threat, guilt, feelings of depression, anxiety, unpleasant engagement with the environment, as opposed to positive ones, which is about hope for the future, possibilities, dreams, sense of joy and optimism. So maybe that conversation on the table is more important than we think. Maybe those words or those statements that we make around managing that pain or doing that, just the way we shift it, could be heard in a different way too. So I know that that's a sort of a big sort of piece there, but this had huge impact, and we've presented this at corporate health conferences now, and people are starting to listen to it because you go, wow, they can actually prove it. It's not just about how they feel. There's great research there too where they've actually measured physiological parameters of when you're working with someone, say as a coach or a counsellor, and if the person reported having a really good session and being in rapport, they have almost parallel physiological parameters, heart rate, sweating rate, everything between the coach, counsellor and the client. interesting stuff. They even measured a boy and his dog. How's this one? Like you're going probably going, how's this relevant? But a boy, when he's with his Labrador, this particular thing, the heart rate was lowered, and the dog was too. When they parted, both the heart rates went up. They were sort of under stress. It was just, we have an effect on people, a huge effect on people when we're with them. And some of the conversation is part of it, and some of it is just the way we are in relationship with people. So you get the results. I've told you that asking the questions in a different way produced a completely different result. So what is it all about? Being able to actively listen. Yeah, everyone's heard that term. These are counselling skills. Active listening is about letting the person know that you've actually heard. Asking questions that don't yes or no. Putting the clipboard down. I always say put the clipboard down metaphorically, you know. Ask the question so you're interested rather than just ticking the box. Reflecting, that must be difficult for you, particularly around emotions. Clarifying. So let me just see if I've got this straight. What you're saying is that you're experiencing this pain, and I'm using that as an example now, but such and such. So the person knows that you've heard. I'll tell you another story about that one. I came home one night, my lovely long-suffering partner, and I'd had a bad day. You know how you do something? I just wanted to dump. I'm a female after all. This is what happened to the golden. There was that person. And he sat there and he went, and he was listening very quietly. He's a man of few words, which is a really good thing because I have enough for both of us. So he sat there and just sort of go, and then he said, what should we have for dinner? I'm like, he hasn't heard me. I'm unheard. And there began this conversation around, but listen to what I've just said. And he said, well, yeah, I know, I heard what you said. And he repeated nearly verbatim everything I'd said with the emotion, the whole thing. I said, but I didn't know. So this was a good example of how you actually have to let someone know you've heard. It's not enough to just hear. So clarifying, summarising. So what we say is very important. And at times, there is time for silence. So maybe in that case, if he'd just been quiet and not mentioned dinner, it would have been okay. I could have bowled on it, okay? But these are micro skills that, you know, some people might say, oh, it actually is really, really important, really, really powerful, the effect they have on people. And strengths, actually, so helping people tap into what they're good at. You know, you can do this, you've done that before, I've seen you, I know that you've actually had the determination to do that. This is something you can probably apply to this next challenge. Motivational interviewing, gosh, I'd love another couple of hours to talk about that. We haven't got it. That's literally not producing resistance. Conversation where we don't let people go, no, I won't do it. And it's usually people who are resistant to change. Developing discrepancy, rolling with all these other things that we teach sort of in the training, which for some of you might say, hey, this is great, I want to know more. And some of you go, it's enough to know that it makes a difference. The being skills are the things about being mindful. We said about being present in the moment. When you're working with people, to do that instead of thinking about your next 3 clients, very, very important. Warmth, it's got to be genuine. You know, you ever been with someone that's just so cold and detached and you can't say why they are that way? But we like warmth from people. And calm. Calm's a good thing too. Affirmation. So being able to actually affirm. And affirmation is not just speaking the words, it's actually being with the person in a certain way that affirms their sort of sense in the world as well. That's respect, I'd probably call it. Playfulness. Hey, if you're a person who's got a sense of humour, for God's sake, use it with your clients. Because, you know, it kind of makes the most serious situations sometimes bearable too. Courage. They're all relationship skills. So trust and rapport, showing empathy, believing in your client, finding out what's important, no matter what you're doing, know something about your client, being relaxed, paying attention, letting the client take the lead, acknowledge and praise. So the final part of the wellness coaching model is 3 monthly behavioural goals. So we don't talk about what will you have achieved, although achievement is important. We say what will you be doing in 3 months' time that will actually let you know you're on the way to getting what you want in your vision if you've had time to do that. What's the first step? What can you do next week? Okay, so you start small. You don't plan. It's not like a marathon training program. You don't say what you're doing in 6 weeks' time. It's what you do next week and what are you working towards. And that's my sort of little thing. I've already done the soapbox thing about this idea of being, you know, a victim in our own world. All this stuff, yep, you gather now. I just think that coaching skills are valuable for pretty much anybody in any walk of life because they're simply relationship skills and we don't always get it right. It's really hard to coach your teenagers, by the way. I've tried it and there he goes, oh God, you're not doing that again, are you? And that's probably about all I can tell you. I've put some workshop dates up there. I, again, would really like to back up Ian to say, well done, Jeff. I think that the people that you've drawn together and the fact that we've all got different ways of expressing the things that we're very passionate about, the fact that you're in the room and you'll have all listened to what I've said, certainly maybe in different ways, and I'm really hoping, again, that you've taken some things from that. You go, if it's 1, 2 or 3 things that you can use in your life and in your work. And thanks for coming along. Hopefully I'll see you again.